Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the blueprint for India's economic future, all laid out in the latest union budget. And let me tell you, this is way more than just a financial statement. It's a strategic plan to transform India into a developed nation by the year 2047.
So let's kick things off with the one number that just screams ambition. A proposed 12.2 lakh crore rupees in public capital expenditure. Now that's the government's direct investment in long-term assets. Think roads, railways, that kind of thing. And this spending is absolutely crucial. Why? Because it has a multiplier effect. Think of it this way. For every single rupee spent on infrastructure, you can generate several more in economic activity, which means more jobs and a bigger boost for private investment.
And this quote from the finance minister really gets to the heart of the philosophy behind that massive number. And that word she uses, Kartavya, which means duty, that's not just a random choice. It frames the entire budget not just as a set of policies, but as a genuine mission to hit the accelerator on growth, boost competitiveness, and shield the economy from whatever the world throws at it.
So how's this whole vision structured? Well, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts for you. We'll start with the big picture, the main philosophy, then we'll dive into the plans for infrastructure, business, and of course, people. And then we'll wrap up by looking at the big question, how is this all getting funded?
All right, let's jump right into that first part, the big picture. At the very core of this budget, you'll find a framework that's built on 3 guiding principles, or as the government is calling them, 3 duties.
So you've got these 3 duties, right? They're basically the storyline for almost every single major announcement. First up, get that growth engine running and keep it running. Second, empower people to actually be partners in that growth. And third, and this is crucial, make sure the benefits of all this development reach everyone. You put those 3 together, and that's the mission to create a Viksit Bharat, a developed India. Okay, so that first duty, accelerating growth. How do you actually do that? Well, it all starts with a massive, and I mean massive push in infrastructure. The budget even gives it a cool name, the Reform Express, which tells you everything you need to know about the speed they're aiming for here.
Now, to really get a sense of what's happening, just take a look at this chart. It's pretty incredible. Public infrastructure spending has rocketed from just 2 lakh crore rupees back in FY15 all the way up to a proposed 12.2 lakh crore for FY27. This isn't just a little bump. It's a huge, sustained investment designed to completely reshape the country's physical landscape.
And a huge piece of this puzzle is connecting people like never before. The plan? 7 brand new high-speed rail corridors. And get this, they're not just calling them train lines, they're calling them growth connectors. The idea is that these aren't just for getting from point A to point B faster, but are meant to link major economic hubs, pull in investment, and spark development all along the way.
But hey, it's not just about us zipping around the country. There's a huge focus on moving stuff, goods, more efficiently, more cheaply, and importantly, in a greener way. We're talking about a new east-west freight corridor, firing up 20 new national waterways, and even a scheme to get more cargo off our crowded roads and onto coastal shipping routes. The goal here is ambitious: double the share of cargo moved by water by 2047.
And if you're wondering what all this infrastructure stuff actually looks like in real life, this slide is a perfect example. It's brilliant. Under a scheme called Parvatmala, the proposed Kedarnath ropeway is set to do something amazing. Think about it, a tough, grueling 8 to 9 hour trek slashed to just 36 minutes. That's a game changer, making places like this safer, faster, and just way more accessible for everybody.
Okay, so the country's roads and railways are getting a major facelift. But what about the businesses that are the real engine of the economy? How does the budget help them? Well, the focus here is on creating what they're calling champion MSMEs, basically helping small and medium-sized businesses grow up and compete on the world stage.
To make that happen, the budget lays out a really clear 3-part strategy. First, equity support, a new 10,000 crore rupee fund to give them capital to grow. Second, liquidity support. This is all about making sure they get paid on time by mandating a special platform for government enterprises. And third, professional support, creating these corporate mitras to help small businesses handle all the complex paperwork and rules without breaking the bank.
All right, now let's shift gears to that second core duty, fulfilling aspirations and building capacity. This is where the focus moves from concrete and steel to human potential, zeroing in on services, skills, and health for India's incredibly young population.
So what we're seeing here is a whole series of really specific investments in sectors that are just poised to explode. You've got the high-tech stuff, like a big push into biopharma to make India a global hub. And on the flip side, you've got a focus on the high-touch care economy,
training caregivers and building up hubs for medical tourism. The common thread through all of this, creating better jobs and improving everyone's quality of life.
Okay, high-speed reel. Biopharma hubs, support for businesses. This is a huge, ambitious plan. Which, of course, leads to the big question. How on earth are we going to pay for all of it? Let's get into the financial nuts and bolts.
Well, the answer is pretty standard, really. It's a mix of collecting taxes and borrowing money. But, and this is a big but, they're making a point to be really careful with the finances. The goal is to bring down the fiscal deficit, which is just a fancy way of saying they're trying to shrink the gap between what they spend and what they earn. This is a huge signal to investors that the government is managing its books responsibly, even with this massive spending spree.
And while a lot of this is big-picture economic stuff, there are some things in here that you might feel directly. For example, if you're planning a trip abroad, check this out. They're proposing to cut the tax collected at source on overseas tour packages, slashing it from those confusing 5% and 20% rates all the way down to a simple, flat 2%.
So when you put it all together, what you have is this incredibly clear and incredibly ambitious roadmap. It's a massive bet on infrastructure, on industry, and on people. The real question now is, will this Reform Express actually get to its destination? Will it turn all of India's amazing potential into reality and create that developed nation by 2047?